I'd love to get your, 90-second pitch around who are you and what does your company do?
100%. So my name is Philippe Reynier, and basically I'm a consultant by background. I used to be with Boston Consulting Group in Switzerland, covered a lot of project at the intersection of digital and strategy, basically either in Switzerland or internationally in I guess in wealth management centers like Hong Kong, Singapore, Dubai, etc. Then moved on to work for one of my main clients, which was UBS. First at group level, then I became the head of digital strategy for the bank. Lots of digital strategy topics as well, but also implementation. I was in charge of the digital transformation roadmap and of fintech partnership investments. And after, I think, 5 or 6 years, I joined the fintech world by becoming the CEO of a RegTech, so as in a regulatory technology, uh,
Hmm.
mm, for 1.5 years. And afterwards, basically, I left to start building Cigno. So what is Cigno? Basically, when we started working on that, the idea was that we were interested in the intersection of AI and professional services. And the idea was a bit what we observed at least was that there are some professional services verticals in which there's a lot happening from an AI perspective, like legal, where you have major companies like Harvey, Legora, and you have like AI for legal place in every country, in every major country in the world. And then we looked at other professional services verticals like consulting, which is a huge vertical, and there was
Hmm.
nothing, or at least nothing big. That triggered a bit our curiosity, and we started doing many, consulting firm interviews, which sort of confirmed our assumption that that sort of vertical was lagging behind from an AI perspective. And so we started working on a solution that hopefully will become the Harvey of consulting.
That's great. That's great. So let's kind of go through a little bit of like, how are you just sort of thinking about it? What are some of the backbones of some of the thoughts and maybe some of the questions that you're answering or problems and solutions that you're thinking about right now of going, this is why we're building this tool because we're really seeing this problem happening.
Yeah. So, during the interviews we ran in, I guess, the second quarter of last year, most, if not all, the consulting firm we were talking to told us the same story, which was a bit our clients think we use AI, so they don't want to pay for our juniors anymore, which is an issue because it's at the core of the business model of a consulting firm. But we don't really use AI, and whenever we use AI, or at least trying to use AI, generic AI solutions such as foundational models, bad things happened. Juniors were exposed to AI outputs on topics that they didn't really know. Outputs were copied and included in client deliverables, which were then on presented to clients. And obviously, the clients, they know their stuff and their industry quite well, so they could identify right away that something was off.
Hmm.
And we literally heard that story many times. What we did at this point is we came to maybe 10 to 15 consulting firms that we knew very well and told them, hey, if it's such a major issue, let's use the summer 2025 and run 20 hours of workshop to define together what platform for the industry, specifically for consulting, should look like, which is what we did. And essentially, the platform has 3 to 4 key pillars. The first one is the first request from the consulting firm is that it shouldn't be generic. It should work and think like a consulting team. So we have more than 100 agents in the current version of the platform. There will be way more in the MVP that basically replicate the main consulting frameworks, roles in a consulting teams, etc. So it really thinks like a consulting. We have a UX and a user interface that really reflect how consultants actually work from, getting a brief from a client to building a hypothesis to putting together a storyline and then designing a deliverable that is client ready. And then another thing that was quite key was also that, the insights generated by the agent shouldn't be based on internet broadly. It should be based only on curated data sets, so very clearly verifiable, which is the reason why we have our own data corpus. So these are the main principles. And maybe I'll just add a fourth one, which is a bit that the fear, and I think it's the same in other professional services verticals, is that AI leads to the standardization of a service. And this absolutely not be the case. So Cigno, the company and the product we're building, has really as a core principle human in the loop, always having a human in the loop, and that everything we build is really tailored to the user, his or her expertise and way of running a consulting project.
Interesting. I like the term you use. I saw it a couple times around it's elevation, not automation. Maybe expand a little bit upon that because I thought that was a really unique way of kind of describing how you're sort of approaching this.
Yeah, pretty much like the elevation. The idea with elevation is that we don't like the idea that that we heard quite a few times and that you can sometimes see, on LinkedIn or in other kind of business media where a few AI agents are going to replace McKinsey or BCG, which to me makes absolutely no sense. And the idea of Cigno is really that we use AI to make consultants better, but consultants are still at the center of what we do, and Cigno is just a platform to help them be more efficient, more accurate, and ultimately generate more value for their clients. It's absolutely not about replacing the consultant.
Yeah. Have you seen or had an aha moment since you started some of the testing, maybe last summer, where you really saw this, what you're building kind of either really help a scenario, or did you just have some sort of moment where you're like, hey, we are actually really onto something here?
Yeah, 100%. I think the first moment, the first aha moment was when we actually did the workshops, because we realized that we were actually tackling a topic that really, really mattered for the consulting industry as a whole, and where there was a very high sense of urgency. And then, when some of our co-design partners saw the actual demo initially and now alpha versions of Cigno, they were all like, wow, if you manage to build this at scale and for multiple consulting project types, you could be onto something very big.
Mm, 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 mm.
So this kind of validation from very senior industry executives that were involved in design workshop and our partners, that was probably the real aha moment. Like we're onto something.
And when you're describing sort of consultants, is there a vertical of that really makes the most sense right now, or can consultants be anything? Just how broad or narrow are we really discussing in terms of maybe an audience right now for the tool?
Yeah. So I think when people tend to hear consultant, they think strategy consulting. They think BCG, Kinsey, Bain, Oliver Wyman, etc. If you look at the consulting market, which is a huge market, I think strategy consulting is probably 10% of that market. And the tech and ops consulting is, when you add both of those categories together, it's a bit more than 50% of the market. And with tech and ops consulting, you can think of the Accentures, Capgeminis, Deloitte, etc. of this world. But there's also a ton of independent consultants and very small consulting firm, often with partners that come from those larger firms that I mentioned before in the market. I think the very few solutions you can see in the market today, they're almost exclusively tackling strategy consulting. Objective basically is to hit the market with our MVP with a decently broad consulting project coverage, which would include some strategy consulting project types, such as product strategy, market entry strategy, business unit strategy, corporate strategy, etc. But also non-strategy consulting project types, and especially tech and ops consulting. So, we have vendor selection and implementation, cost optimization, regulatory change management, data and AI role definition, those kind of things. And this is very, very big. And there's a lot of consultants in the world working on those kind of topics, and it's very poorly covered as well. So our idea is really not to sort of diminish the concept of consulting to strategy consulting, because the industry is way richer than that.
Sure. Another phrase I saw you use a couple of times, the human in the loop concept. How do you sort of navigate and think about user error, user ability, and just the human side of everything we're kind of talking about right now? How do you sort of navigate and think about that as you're building, designing, laying out, imagining what somebody might type in, not type in, use it? How do you sort of just think about that?
So that was a big topic when we co-design the product. The fear was a bit that in consulting would be some kind of black box where, you put in a prompt, then it spits out final deliverable right away. You have no idea where the data comes from. It's obviously super generic because, a project of 3 months cannot be replaced by one single prompt. And, that's the extreme that consulting firms absolutely don't want to have. Now, the question was more, how can we have transparency, auditability on what's happening? How can we influence what's happening, and how can we build into the output of AI our expertise, our typicity into the output of AI? How can we do that? And the journey and the workflows that we've built within Cigno exactly address those issues. The first thing is in Cigno, it's not like you have a prompt and then there's the final variable right away. You put in a brief. Cigno helps you improve the brief. Is sort of the brief for the whole project. Cigno will improve the brief to be more specific, to make sure that the output of AI is better. Then you get a storyline with all the sections of, let's say, a product strategy deck, for instance. You can interact with the content of each of the sections. So you essentially set it aside, and you can tell Cigno, hey, I don't like that. I want 2 data sets instead of 1 in my market sizing. I don't like the formulation of these things, etc. And so you iterate with Cigno in the same way that you would iterate with a junior consultant as a partner. Whenever you're not sure where something is coming from, an insight, a statement is coming from, there's a click to source feature, so you can know exactly what is the source, what is the original document, read through, Cigno got the insight from, etc. And once you're done with all of that, basically, Cigno will tell you, hey, if that's the story you want to tell on such or such slide, probably these are the 3 or 4 different visualization styles you may have for that slide. And once you pick everything, basically you have a client-ready deck, but you exactly know how you got from your initial brief to the final deck, and you were able to interact with all the content all the way through. And the final piece that is really important to maintain the expertise of the consulting firm is that Cigno is absolutely not meant to be some kind of standard utility where any kind of analysis is run in exactly the same way. One consulting firm to the next. So each of the consulting firms we work with, they want to maintain that specificity, that USP. And what we do with all the required confidentiality agreements is that they would share with us their IP, for instance, a deck representing how they run such or such project type, and we would build agents that reflect and replicate exactly how they do it, how they run analysis, generate content, visualize content, etc. So that's not the same as another consulting firm using Cigno.
Right. I was just going to ask about this. Like, how are you sort of protecting data, protecting the IP of each one of these consulting firms that are using the tool? How do you just sort of articulate that and explain it to all the different founders that might use it?
Yeah. So basically, we have a concept called corpus. So within the Cigno infrastructure, we have data corpuses, we have methodological corpuses, and we have visualization corpuses. Corpus is essentially a set of information. For data corpus, for instance, the consulting firm can have their own knowledge base, and obviously we can connect ourselves to the knowledge base, but obviously this will never be shared with other consulting firms. But we at Cigno, we also have our own corpus, which is a public corpus that can be used by all of our users. In the same way, within the methodological corpus, we offer publicly agents that reflect consulting frameworks that can be used by any Cigno user. But as I was explaining just before, each of the firms that use Cigno, they can tell us, hey, we have a specific way of running things. So please build for us agents, only our agents, and will never be shared with anyone else using Cigno. And for the layout corpus is the exact same story. We have a number of slide formats that are public and that can be used for any kind of for a specific kind of framework, analysis, context, etc. And then the consulting firm can come to us and say, hey, I don't know, data maturity assessment in the context of a data strategy project. I have my very specific way of like visualizing those slides. I want it to be reflected in Cigno, but not accessible to anyone else but us. And this is possible.
Very, very cool. How much onboarding would typically happen for a new project that said, yeah, I want to try this? What does that onboarding typically look like? And also, as somebody's getting onboarded, how are you ensuring that they're actually using it the right way or in a way that's beneficial so that they see the value of it really, really quickly? Just what does it sort of look like for a new user?
So, I think we have 2 very different kind of users, at least when we'll go live.
Yeah.
One category is, the individual users. So imagine an independent consultant. And those users, in general, they're already very happy to get access to all of the public agents, frameworks, etc. that we're offering. In their case, there's literally nothing to do. They don't even have to speak to us. There will be a digital onboarding process, and then all of the public agents would be available right away. So in that, the onboarding and the UX is very simple. So from that perspective, there's nothing special to do except to subscribe to Cigno and go through the onboarding journey. When it's about a larger consulting firm, they will probably want to have their knowledge base connected to Cigno. They will probably want to have their own reflecting their own way of running projects, their own consulting
Mm,
works, etc. And in that case, there will be a short setup period at the beginning, which you can think of as some kind of very short consulting project where they show us how they run things. We build the related agents within Cigno,
mm,
which in many cases is just adapting some of our existing agents to their own specific
right.
needs. And once that's done, we make those proprietary agents available only to them. So
Mm,
there's a
mm.
whole period at the beginning where we set up stuff.
Gotcha, gotcha. What's the business plan here? What's the business model? Is this a subscription base? Is it more custom with what you were just describing there? Just as an investor, kind of looking at this, what will be the business model?
So basically, it will be a token-based model. So
Okay.
it's consumption-based. But if you want to get some kind of average, if a user wants to cover the let's say average documentary volume of a consultant per month, probably he or she is going to pay something around 100 Swissies or euros or dollars, whatever. So that's basically that's the model. But it is token based, so it's really based on consumption.
Gotcha, gotcha. And is it something that as a firm would have different seats as well? Like would my whole team have access, or would it be sort of structured that way, kind of on a monthly basis or an annual basis?
They will be a bit in the same way that we have two main kind of users, individual users and enterprise users.
Hmm.
Pricing would be set up a bit in that way. So what I was mentioning so far is more on the individual user side. For enterprise clients, it will obviously depend on the number of users, but also on the scope they want us to cover. Some enterprise client want to have like an enterprise, fee scheme, but they don't have a big internal knowledge base and they don't want an integration of their knowledge base into Cigno. Or maybe they cover, they're a very specialized consulting firm and they always run the same kind of projects. You have a lot of that in data and AI. You have a lot of data and AI strategy consulting firms. And then, the agents that we would need to implement for them to reflect specifically their expertise will be limited to one kind of project. In other cases, if it's a generalist consulting firm, we would have to build way more agents. There's a basic rule, which is per user, the monthly cost is roughly around 100 Swissie. And then the additional rule is, it depends a bit on the scope. So the enterprise fee scheme is at the end going to be tailored to the actual requirements of the clients.
Gotcha. Cool. Cool. How do you sort of prepare and think about how quick AI is shifting and changing every 6 weeks? I don't even know at this point. So how do you guys sort of just prepare, think about that, and make changes when appropriate, but not too far out or get left behind? Just how do you sort of think about the speed of just AI in general, and how do you guys navigate that?
So we're model agnostic, generally speaking. So the idea
Hmm.
is really not to be only focusing on ChatGPT and like Claude or whatever else.
Hmm.
We're model agnostic, and what we try to do is model routing. So the idea is that we have many agents. Those agents need to be somehow powered by one LLM and one specific model. And what we try to do is to, for any given agent, use the model that will, generate the output that is expected while minimizing
Mm.
top usage. And, there are some, if I only take the ChatGPT models, for instance, there are some tasks that are complex or require more processing, like a market sizing, for instance, where
Hmm.
you might be better off using ChatGPT 4 or 5. And there are some tasks that are way simpler, like you've done all the analysis in a project and you just need to generate the executive summary, where you might be better off using ChatGPT Mini or Nano,
Hmm.
which would provide the required output at the right level of quality, but at a much lower price point. So
Mm,
this is how we think about it. It's not like we prefer this model versus this model. It's more like
right.
we would try to remain always agnostic to always pick the right one.
So, with that in mind, then, if somebody were to ask you, what is your guys' IP? Is it the agents, the wrapper, how you're using it, how you're basically kind of putting the recipe together, or is there something more that really you have an IP that people would be investing in?
Yeah. So, I mean, yeah, I guess it's quite a few things. The first thing is if you look at the backend of Cigno, it's not a patchwork of, third party system. Everything is
Hmm.
built from scratch and really specifically for consulting with the needs of consulting firms in mind. Then there's a lot of methodological IP in Cigno. In the sense that all of our agents, they've been coded to reflect how a consultant, strategy consultant, tech and ops consultant, etc., would
Hmm.
actually do things. And all of this know-how is proprietary. Then we have some reinforcement learning skills. So the more our agents are getting used, the more we get feedback, the more they're getting better at doing what they do. And then I think the other thing that is quite important is that it's not only about AI. We obviously are an AI native platform, so AI is the core of what we do. But there's a lot of our tech stack that has nothing to do with AI, and it's still
Mm,
absolutely required to do what we do in the most efficient way.
sure. Sure. That's very cool. Well, where can people kind of dive in to learn a little bit more? If they're interested in this conversation, where should people go right now?
They could go to our website, signoai.com. The whole team is also more than happy to have discussions with anyone who's interested in what we're doing. We also have a LinkedIn page, but it's well, let's forget about this.
Mhm.
But so yeah, more the website or reaching out directly to us, and they'll be very happy to have discussion with anyone interested.
Awesome. Awesome. For all my listeners out there, you guys know I always put all the links, emails, and any information you might need in the show notes. I recommend going to check this out. I think what you guys are doing is very unique around just building out this infrastructure specifically for consultants. I know when you're talking and somebody that's struggled with trying to piecemeal some of these ChatGPT's clause together for even what we do as an agency, it's tough. It's tough because sometimes it spits out stuff. You're like, that is not right. That is not what we want. That's not it. And you start to find, like, if I'm not looking at it as the person with the institutional knowledge, the human portion of it, you might send some stuff that looks ridiculous.
Yeah.
So very, very cool stuff. So we're going to be doing this. I look forward to kind of following the story, following the company around. So for all my listeners out there, please go check it out. Go reach out. Very cool stuff here. Thanks so much for your time.